This is On the Other Hand.
A podcast that explores politics and other issues of importance to Arkansans through conversations with community members who are working with others across the political divide. On the Other Hand is sponsored by Braver Angels in Arkansas, part of a national organization that aims to reduce political polarization by promoting honest and respectful dialogue among people of all political beliefs.
Well, hello and good morning or good afternoon, wherever you're listening from today. Welcome to On the Other Hand. I'm your host, April Chatham Carpenter, and I'm here with my co-host, Glenn White. And we're looking forward to today's conversation as we continue to learn how community leaders in Arkansas are helping work towards solutions. So, Glenn, who's visiting with us today?
Well, you know, April, as we've done some in the past, we've wanted people to meet some of our leaders in Braver Angels because all of us do work across the aisle as much as possible and try to maintain the respectful dialogue goals that we have. So today is one of our members. He's David Childs. David is our Red State co-coordinator. So he has been a great find for us. He came to us at some point, and I'm sure he'll tell us more about how he found us and has been actively involved, and we're really happy to have him.
Well, I'm excited to have you here, David, and so welcome to On the Other Hand, and thank you for joining us, taking the time out of your day to do that. So let's start by having you tell us generally, what do you do with your time these days?
Good morning, guys. It's good to be back with you. Let your audience know that we do already know each other through Braver Angels, and we have a really good relationship, and it's always fun to get to spend time with you guys. I've been retired now for about 6 years. And so a lot of my time is spent just doing retirement fun things, which for me, things that I consider fun are I enjoy cooking. I particularly enjoy cooking things that you might not could normally get normally in a restaurant. I like to do a lot of international cooking and things that maybe have some rather peculiar combinations of flavors that get combined together that, you know, is not your typical run-of-the-mill fare. So I guess things that are a little different and exotic. So that's kind of fun. I enjoy just reading. Most of my life and career, I was pretty busy and did not get to just read for fun as much as I would have liked to. So I've started reading some of the, 100 most recommended novels. And so I've been doing the War and Peace and Moby Dick thing for a while. My wife and I are in a little Celtic music band. I play a little bit of harp, and she is the band's singer. And in fact, we are about to make a few YouTube videos to get us out there a little bit more on social media, and to get us let those be our audition tapes for some bookings to do some shows.
I look forward to seeing and hearing the YouTube videos, I assure you, David.
Yeah, well, you should be, because actually it's actually pretty good. It's actually pretty good stuff.
All right.
And I'm pretty active in my Rotary Club. I'm a member of Hot Springs Village's Public Works and Infrastructure Advisory Committee. Since most of my own career was in government, I've got some experience managing in a government sector, so I'm helping with that. I was director this year of the Hot Springs Classical Music Festival. People that don't know, Hot Springs has had a classical music festival for the last 23 years, and classical musicians come in literally from all over the entire world and perform at the Hot Springs Music Festival. And I had the opportunity and the pleasure this last year to be the the manager of it. And then finally, last but not least, over the last couple of years, I've started getting involved with Braver Angels. And so you add all of those things up together, and that kind of fills up a retiree's day.
I'm thinking that you've filled up your day and multiple days with all that, and great to hear more about your interest. I had no idea about the international foods. You were making me hungry as you were talking about that. I'll have to try one of your dishes sometime. Well,
I'll just give you one quick example that's really, really good. And it's kind of the thing I like to do. I'm always looking at recipes, and I'm looking for the different and the unusual. And we just cooked, and we just had last night. It was called a Jamaican stew, kind of a Jamaican beef stew. And what really got my attention about it was it said that the seasonings were a mix of soy and A1 steak sauce and barbecue. Soy, A1 steak sauce, and barbecue. I'd never seen that combination before. So I said, "Oh well, we got to try this," and it was excellent.
well, might have to have that recipe sometime. Well, you mentioned you're also involved in Braver Angels in some of your spare time. How did you find out about Braver Angels?
There is a friend of mine here in the village that he and I were just talking one day, and he knew about my background in government. He also knew about some of my personal beliefs, which we'll get to a little further in the interview, I think. And he just said to me one day, he said, "Hey," he said, "I just participated in a Zoom meeting of this group called Braver Angels." And he said they sound like the kind of thing that you would have an interest in, and maybe you go to their national website and look them up, and look up when's their next Zoom meeting, and maybe you sit in on it. And I clicked all the way into the Arkansas Braver Angels, and I contacted you two guys. And the two of you told me when your next Zoom meeting was going to be, and I listened in, and quite frankly, I listened very, very closely for to what degree did it sound like it had integrity, or to what degree did it sound like it was just a bunch of BS for show, quite bluntly. And I really found you guys to be sincerely committed. And so I developed my interest in helping with that. And here we all are.
Well, we're grateful to have you, and you've been a joy to work with and learn from in the last year or so that you've been involved. So, you've mentioned that you've been involved in government. I'd be interested in even how you got interested in politics in the first place.
Well, the way that I have always answered that, and again, I just a minute ago I talked about integrity and sincerity, and I'm extremely serious about integrity and sincerity, and it underpins what I'm about to say, which is I have absolutely never had any interest in politics. My interest has always been sincerely in public service. I'm interested in getting potholes fixed and getting them fixed as efficiently and as quickly as possible. I'm interested in providing our young people with an internationally competitive education. I'm interested in our country providing health care that is of equal quality and cost to what is provided in some other countries. So my interest and motivation has never been in political, I like to call it political soap opera. I've never cared anything about, nor have I ever participated in any of that. My interest is in getting potholes fixed, and that's as far as I go.
So, where all has your journey taken you in terms of this public service interest of yours over time?
Well, the first thing that I will say about that, as a little bit of a lesson about politics, is that it kept my career at the local level because I did not play political games and because I was just in it to be kind of a Mr. Smith goes to Washington do-gooder. It's really interesting that in a 30-year career, even though I had a lot of successes at actually getting a lot of improvements in public service, it's really interesting that I never got asked or encouraged to run for higher offices. People that are a lot better entertainers than I am tend to get asked to run for higher offices. And I think that in and of itself tells you something about the state of our affairs. So I dedicated most of my career to city and county level government. And quite frankly, I was perfectly happy doing that because that kept me a lot closer to everyday people. It kept me a lot closer to the real nuts and bolts of implementing public services. And so I think that I think I was in the right place, and I'm glad I was there. And quite frankly, I'm glad that I never did make the mistake of attempting to move higher up the political food chain.
So, what kind of city and county experience have you had? Where have you worked?
I worked for about 26 years in Dallas County, Dallas County government. I worked in the county clerk's office, in the Dallas County courts, and I also served for 20 years as the Dallas County tax assessor collector. And in Texas, that job is responsible for property tax collections and is also the county level agent for the DMV, vehicle registrations and titles. And so in Texas, between the property taxes and the DMV, that's actually a pretty big job. And then from there, I went out and I spent about 7 years in the city of El Paso. And in El Paso, I did about 5 years with the tax office. And then I did about another year and a half as the citywide performance manager.
You know, you were talking about the things that you have done, and you were very motivated to be effective in what you do as a public official. And it reminds me of this notion of that we hear a lot about from different sides about, you know, how effective can government employees be, or is it much more effective to have a business run approach to things? You know, like I guess at its extremes there could be a stereotype that government employees are lazy and incompetent and don't care and that kind of thing. I wonder what your thoughts and experiences are along those lines about kind of comparing how well things get done with public employees versus, you know, private sector efforts.
That's an excellent question, Glenn. I'm glad you're giving me the opportunity to share an answer with the audience that is maybe a little bit different from what's normally heard. As you yourself said, Glenn, generally what we hear is that private business is immensely better run and managed than government. And my personal experience has been a little bit different than that. Even though my own personal career as a manager of an office was totally in government, because I was motivated to do as good of a job and to make my offices as effective and as efficient as possible, I got my PhD in management. I became certified in a couple of performance management concepts, those being Malcolm Baldrige and Lean. I don't know how many people may have heard of Malcolm Baldrige. Quite a few people have heard of Lean. I'm certified in those. I became pretty knowledgeable about quality management practices. And I not only implemented them in the government agencies that I managed, but I also started teaching college classes, MBA classes, and I also started doing some consulting. And my classes and my consulting were with both government agencies and also in the private sector. Not only that, but in my own job in government, I hired a lot of private sector companies as vendors to do projects as a private company vendor for my government agency. And so I got to watch the quality of a lot of private companies. And then I got to teach students from private companies, and I got to do some private company consulting. And based upon all of that, quite frankly, it was my personal experience that in both the private sector and in the government sector, there's a given percentage of all organizations that are lousy, that are embarrassing. There is a given percentage of organizations, both in government and in the private sector, that try and that they do a pretty decent job. And then there's a very small percentage of organizations, both in government and in the private sector, that do an excellent job. And it's a fairly equal percentage in both. The only difference that I ever found between government and private businesses is that there is a little bit of a natural motivation that private sector companies have to make money because they have to make money to survive. If they don't make money, they go bankrupt and they're gone. And in the government, if you don't operate efficiently, you just raise the public's taxes. You don't have any motivation to be efficient because there's always an endless pot of money, supposedly from the public, that will fund your incompetence in government. And private businesses don't have that luxury. And but a lot of them still fail anyway. Out of ignorance and arrogance and mismanagement, they'll still fail. But at least they begin with a little bit more of a built-in motivation to survive than government does. But other than that, in my career, I really did not find that much difference in actual operational performance between the government agencies I interacted with and the private sector ones I interacted with. And quite frankly, that came as a major disappointment to me. It became a disappointment to me specifically relative to the private sector. And I went, really? You know, you guys, if you don't make it, you're gonna die, and you still can't make it anyway. That's a lot more sad than incompetence in government. So anyway, that's my response to that.
That's a good point. I appreciate hearing that from you. It actually matches my experience. I've worked with at both state and federal levels as a government employee, and I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think you're right. You hit up on something where human nature kind of rises to the top in terms of its influence, regardless of the setting. But the setting can influence and provide additional factors that sway you one way or another. I also got the impression that private versus public, there are strengths and weaknesses in each case, which is what you encounter in most things in life, really.
So I'm wondering. I know that you have a book that you wrote called The Organization Whisperer, David. I'm curious as to how you came up with the name for that, and whether that was based on your own experiences in the public sector when you wrote it, or something else.
I got the idea for the Organization Whisperer because, as I said, I'm trained, my PhD's in management, and then I'm certified in Lean and Baldrige. And then I implemented a lot of the ideas and the concepts of all of that training into the organizations that I managed myself. And the thing that I learned from that is that the more successful businesses, the more successful organizations are they are just much more bottom up in their managerial philosophy than top down. And to simplify that, it just boils down to that the worker on the line, the janitor knows the bathroom better than the CEO does. The guy in the jail cell, the prisoner, knows the prison a lot better than the warden does. The closer someone is to the action, the more expert they are about the action. And the better organizations, the organizations that are most respected, the organizations that produce the best performance measures, the organizations that get the best reviews by their customers, are the organizations that use that approach. They're not a narcissistic CEO telling everybody what to do. They are the CEO going to the janitor and asking the janitor, how can we improve the bathroom? And it boils down to that. It's that simple. And I read books about dog whisperers and horse whisperers and those kinds of things. And that's exactly what they do. What they do is they really, really study a dog's world and how a dog sees things and how a dog smells things. And they start making themselves think like a dog instead of them trying to make dogs think like a human. And that's how they get in touch with the dog, is they get in the dog's head and they learn how to be a dog, or they learn how to become a horse. And in that manner, they can understand them better and relate to them better and develop a better relationship with them. And that is exactly the key to success in an organization. It's not for the CEO to be thinking about what the CEO wants. Oh, I want a bigger bonus this next quarter. Who do I fire so I can get a bigger bonus this quarter? It's rooted in how do we improve the organization for the customers? How do we improve the organization for the staff so that they're more motivated to do a better job for the organization? And the way that I find that out is MBWA, management by walking around. It's by me going to the bathroom and asking the janitor, how do we improve this place? And it's the same. It's exactly the same thing. The CEO has to get in the head of the rest of the organization in order to improve it. And it's the same as with dog whisperers and horse whisperers. And so that's how I came up with that.
I love that.
Yeah, the other part about that is you mentioned about the relationship. So in one way, as we find elsewhere in Braver Angels and all the other things we teach, it comes down to individual relationships and how powerful those are in making a difference. So I really appreciate that part.
So can you think of an example where you use some of those principles in a government agency in your work?
Well, I can tell you just a couple of very brief stories. First of all, in Dallas, the tax office that I got elected to manage, we had 12 office locations around Dallas County. So there was a downtown office, which is where my own office and my desk was, but there were also 11 satellite offices where actually about 60% of our total staff was in those 11 satellite offices. And so just within a week or two after I got elected and took over this office, I decided that I was going to go out and visit those satellite offices. And it took me an entire day, and I started doing this an average of once a month for the rest of my career. I would take a day once a month, and I would just spend it going out and visiting all of the satellite offices. And it would take me an entire day to make the whole circuit, because to drop in on all of them, it was about a 150-mile trip in Dallas traffic. And the very first time I ever went out there, every one of the satellite offices, of course, downtown told them I was coming. So they'd been alerted that the dangerous, mean old big boss was coming in. So, clean the bathroom and be on your best behavior. And every one of those offices, when I walked in, they said that I was the first person that they had ever seen from the downtown office. Not the first big boss, the first person of any kind that they had ever seen from the downtown office. And it got to where that their direct manager that was in the downtown office, their direct manager would start coming to me and would say, hey, in the Garland office, I'm having this issue with Sarah. Can you help me with that? And what she was saying was that I knew Sarah in the Garland office better than she did. Because I was going out there, I was visiting, I was talking to these people. Not only was I getting to know them, but I was actually caring about them, and I was remembering about them. And I could sit at my desk and she would come in and say, can you help me with Sarah? And I would say, well, what's the deal with Sarah? And she would say, well, she's tardy all the time. And I would go, well, you do know that Sarah's having to take care of her invalid mother, which until I said it, she wouldn't even know that. And that's one example of what it's about. I'll tell you one more, again, a brief story. We interviewed a young lady to be hired into a beginning position one time. And this young lady had grown up in the most destitute of socioeconomic conditions in Dallas. Everyone in her family had been for several generations on welfare. And this young lady had just graduated high school, and almost immediately upon graduating high school, she'd caught the bus, come to downtown, gone to the personnel office of the county government, filled out an application, and had been sent to us to interview for a job. And she was very poorly educated, barely literate, gave away a lot of things about her upbringing. And just by her demeanor and her lack of education and her lack of sophistication, she very quickly gave away that this is an 18-year-old green, uneducated young lady from a deprived background, everything about that. But what I thought about was that she sat there the entire time with this huge infectious smile on her face. She was happy to be there. She was very wide open in giving of herself to us strangers interviewing her. She had taken the trouble to get on a bus and to come to downtown and to apply for a job. And when we got through, I said, let's hire her and give her a shot. So about 10 days later, I'm sitting at my desk. I get a call from the manager that she had been assigned to. And this was her first day because it took 10 days to finish all the red tape, and every new employee had to get a background check, and they had to get a physical and all kinds of bureaucratic stuff. So generally from hiring to people's first day was 7 to 10 days. So about 10 days later, the manager of her department calls me and says, Mr. Childs, can you come down here? I need to show you something. And this was in the downtown office, not in one of the satellites. So I go downstairs and I go in the manager's office, and she says, Mr. Childs, look through the glass and look out there. This is Laketria's first day. And look out there at how Laketria has shown up for work. And I looked out, and she had the little pink puffy curlers still in her hair. And she was wearing her nightgown that had holes in it and her house slippers. And that is the way that she had shown up at work, because truthfully and sincerely, she did not know any better. And I looked at her And I said, go bring her in here. And she came in. I said, Laketria, I said, look out the glass here and look at all of the other workers out there, and look at how they're dressed. Look at the kind of clothes they're wearing. And I said, do you have any clothes like that at home? And she said, no. And I reached in my wallet. And this was quite a few years ago when things were not as expensive as today. And I reached in my wallet and I pulled out about $60. And I said, Laketria, I want you to go to Target or Walmart, and I want you to buy you 2 or 3 sets of clothes that look a lot like those, and put one of them on, and then just get back here today whenever you've gotten that done. 2 years later, Laketria had become an assistant manager. And I'll just leave it at that.
That's awesome, David. Such great examples, and I appreciate that. We're having a really good conversation here. And Glenn, I think we're going to need to go into a second session to talk more about kind of some political experiences that David's had as we look at working across the political divide. So let's actually just thank people at this point for coming to this first session. So we just thank you to our listeners for joining us for this edition of On the Other Hand. And we hope that you have enjoyed the first part of our discussion today with David Childs. I know that Glenn and I have. And be sure to check out the second part of our conversation and future podcast episodes of On the Other Hand at the Braver Angels Arkansas website, which is arkansas.braverangels.org. And you can find our podcast listed there.
Yeah, we'd like to hear from our listeners. As usual, we always ask this. We want feedback about our program, how it comes across to you. What do you like? What might make it better? We also really appreciate ideas for speakers that may work well with us or topics that you'd like to hear covered. So anything that you can share with us, we'd appreciate. Just email us at otherhandar@gmail.com. That's otherhandar@gmail.com. And if you're not sure you can remember that, just go to our website, and there should be a link there where you can contact us.
Well, On the Other Hand is sponsored by Braver Angels in Arkansas. Music was composed by Randall Standridge of Jonesboro, Arkansas, and was performed by the University of Northern Colorado Symphonic Band, Dr. Richard Main, conductor.
From your host, Glenn White
and April Chatham Carpenter.
Have a good evening, and let's all work to bring our community closer together.